Under OSHA Standard 29 CFR 1910.120, any personnel involved in hazardous waste cleanup or emergency response operations must pass the 40-hour HAZWOPER certification. This diagram illustrates how worker safety regulations intersect with environmental mandates. While OSHA governs overarching hazardous chemicals under Title 29, the EPA dictates specific hazardous waste protocols under Title 40. To navigate this overlap, candidates must master 4 core modules: regulations, scientific principles, site operations, and personal protection. Passing this exam forms the baseline legal defense for corporate liability and provides the necessary protocols for individual survival in highly toxic environments. The regulations module tests foundational compliance. Workers must demonstrate proficiency in hazard communication, correctly interpreting safety data sheets, and understanding the frequency and record-keeping required for medical surveillance. This data table decodes the critical toxicology metrics tested on the exam. Candidates must differentiate between standard exposure limits like PEL and TLV and recognize immediate threats defined by IDLH, alongside the lower and upper explosive limits of volatile substances. The operations module evaluates practical site mechanics. The exam tests protocols for continuous air monitoring, confined space entry requirements, and the precise physical postures and respiratory gear required for safe drum handling. This schematic maps out the incident command system's physical boundaries. To prevent contaminant spread, candidates must know how to establish the exclusion zone or hot zone, the contamination reduction or warm zone, and the support or cold zone. The test requires matching specific activities to these zones. Active cleanup occurs exclusively in the hot zone, decontamination is restricted to the warm zone, and administrative control remains strictly in the cold zone. The science and operations modules test a worker's ability to map invisible chemical threats and establish the physical boundaries necessary to keep those threats contained. Once the site is mapped, the exam moves to its most heavily weighted practical section, selecting and using personal protective equipment and SCBA respirators. This matrix compares PPE levels A through D. The exam requires candidates to navigate the exact relationship between respiratory and skin protection, knowing when to step down from the fully encapsulating level A suit to the basic work uniforms of level D. The protection module also covers decontamination. Candidates must sequence the step-by-step procedures required to scrub personnel and gear as they transition from the hot zone back to the cold zone. To clear the theoretical phase of the certification, candidates face a comprehensive 50-question written exam and must achieve a minimum score of 70%. On this exam, picking the incorrect suit level or omitting a theoretical decontamination step is treated as a critical failure. The scoring reflects the real-world consequence of a fatal chemical exposure. Completing the classroom theory and written exam is legally insufficient for full certification. OSHA mandates 3 days of supervised, hands-on field experience, alongside site-specific training provided by the employer. Once fully certified, workers must maintain their status by completing a mandatory 8-hour refresher course every 12 months. True HAZWOPER compliance demands a continuous cycle of learning, testing, and practical execution. This ensures workers remain protected against rapidly evolving hazardous environments.